You know, one of the things that keeps employers of all sizes up at night is the escalating cost of a thing called workers' compensation. Many call it a hidden cost in doing business. In the summer of last year, it's hard to believe, the summer of 2011, the North Carolina General Assembly ratified and the governor signed into law the first comprehensive reform of workers' comp in 17 years. Joining us now is a key supporter and architect of that initiative of the North Carolina House Speaker Pro Tem Dale Folwell. Your Honor, welcome to the program. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about workers' comp. Why were you so singularly focused? And by the way, Representative, anyone that knows you says that Dale Folwell will pick 2 or 3 or 5 issues, dive deep into those issues, and make those things that he wants to change or at least affect. Why was workers' comp at the top of your list?
Well, workers' comp came to me as a result of listening and then acting and then fixing something that a small business person in Mount Airy, North Carolina told me about, where they were talking about the escalating costs of running their small businesses. And then if you want to fast forward to Fayetteville, North Carolina, I realized through research that the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company in Fayetteville has to produce 3,000 tires per day to pay the workers' comp premium of that plant for that one day. And then I started peeling away the onion and looking at the fact that the largest employer in North Carolina is the state of North Carolina. This is a $100 million issue from our budget standpoint as an employer of people at community colleges, school systems, prisons, and Department of Transportation. And if all that's not enough for your viewers, I think this visual will tell everything. This was a system that was broken. These are the workers' comp laws of Virginia. These are the workers' comp laws of Tennessee. These are the workers' comp laws of South Carolina. These are the workers' comp laws of North Carolina. This was a system where people who were injured were not getting the care they needed quickly enough. We had a lifetime benefit for people with a temporary disability. And you talk about economic development a lot on this show, that if a person, if you're developing or trying to recruit businesses to one of the other states, the first graph that you would show them is this graph, which shows that every border state that borders North Carolina has a cap on their temporary benefits, but North Carolina did not.
Don't other policy decisions have the same benefit or the same impact?
Well, lots of policy decisions have the same impact, but this is as sophisticated as your viewers are. I don't think any one of them woke up this morning thinking about workers' compensation. But it's one of the invisible costs that are keeping North Carolina businesses from coming to North Carolina, businesses from expanding in North Carolina, and in some cases, businesses that are going to leave the state. It's interesting, just recently in Operation Soccer, which was an incentives deal that you've talked about in the past, the workers' comp reform in North Carolina was one of the 3 leading positive reasons why that company was thinking about relocating here. So it's one of the invisible things that we have to continue to work on to benefit the citizens of this state.
Andy, I'm going to give you a chance to wade in here with the representative.
Well, Mr. Speaker, nice to see you. I'm from South Carolina, not North Carolina, but I've done a little bit of reading about North Carolina, and I see that Forbes magazine rates North Carolina as having the 3rd best business climate in the country. And I also know that North Carolina is considering some changes to unemployment structures and reforms as well. So, you know, what I am hearing, and I don't understand, is how can you have the 3rd best business climate and then have all these problems that have to be reformed?
Well, the first answer to his question is that number 3 is not number 1, and that's what we should be trying to get to. Secondly, it's one of the invisible things that I'm not sure even these ranking agencies ever look at. We need to make sure when we think about the state of North Carolina that we realize that for 56 miles, we have as much border with other states as California does. But you can't name one major city in California that borders another state. Think about North Carolina, Asheville, Charlotte, Wilmington, Winston-Salem's 40 miles from the border, Boone. We have a lot of populations that sit on our borders. So therefore, whether it's our workers' compensation system, our unemployment insurance system, we need to make sure that we're not doing things that make North Carolina uncompetitive with the states that border us. This is not just an issue, obviously, to the small businesses or the sponsors of this program, but it's also an issue for the state of North Carolina as an employer of people, And it's even a bigger issue for the counties, the school districts, and the cities who are going to see positive impact from this reform going forward.
Jonathan?
Well, one of the things that...
Hold on. Did you have a follow-up, Andy? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess what I wanted to know is that how is this... there's an old saying, you know, make sure you look at the donut, not the hole. And what I'm curious about is that North Carolina's unemployment rate is one of the tops in the country at 9.5% at the last thing. South Carolina's is 9.9%. And what is fiddling around with workers' comp going to really do to help somebody get a job? Isn't this watching the hole instead of the donut?
Well, I absolutely disagree. I was in McDowell County recently where they have an employer there that employs 2,500 people. 3 years ago, the CEO of that company in Chicago said, you've got to fix the workers' comp system in North Carolina, because if you don't, I'm going to move that plant to another place that starts with the letter M, and it's not going to be Marion. So this is one of the invisible things that I think that HR directors, chief financial officers, and CEOs think about. It's one of the invisible costs. And the fact is that everybody in this studio has a different level of understanding of how much government we should have, but everybody agrees that whatever government we have, we want it to work. And this is a system that was in bad need of reform.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that was really interesting to me in watching this process unfold in the General Assembly this past year was that the partisanship and the kind of ideological battles that were going on in the General Assembly dominated almost every single legislative battle. But this was one issue where the vote totals were 110 to 4 in some cases. And I'm curious as to how you were able to, in a really challenging and political environment, to cobble together a wide variety, as I understand it, from ideological perspectives, to get them on board for something of this major reform.
That's a great question. The way that I approached that was to embrace who I was. And what I am is a conservative who tries to fix the problems that impact people. And then we went and met with the governor's staff, and then we reached out to the Advocates for Justice, the AFL-CIO, the plaintiffs' lawyers, and we said, let's don't focus on what we can do because we're in charge. Let's focus on what should be done. Because there was a broad amount of agreement about a lot of things in here that is hurting lawyers, that's hurting employers, that's hurting employees, and hurting the injured. The title of this bill was Protect. The first goal of any workers' compensation system is for people not to get injured. It's protect. The second word was put. We want to make sure that if people are injured, that they get the medical attention they need as quickly as possible and find some kind of suitable employment to get them back to work as soon as possible. Protect and put North Carolinians back to work. For those that are tragically injured, we want to get them everything they deserve and then some. It's ironic that if you were killed on the job, your spouse only got 300 weeks of benefit in North Carolina. But if you had a temporary disability, that benefit was for the rest of your life. It was all completely broken.
You know, we're kind of talked around this issue of partisanism, and I've got to bring this up, Representative. I think this is critical. But recently, Democrats were not happy with the fact that Republicans in North Carolina had late-night sessions, and Democrats felt like things were being done in the dark and out of sight. The Republicans felt like they were left out of the process when it came to a judicial appointee commission. In South Carolina, Andy, you know this well, that Nikki Haley wanted everybody that answers a government phone to say it's a great day in South Carolina, and the State House in Columbia wanted to take that and make a law to say you didn't have to do that. So, here we are with issues that don't get the job done, that show at least fractured leadership. I guess as Speaker Pro Tem especially, there seems to be a responsibility with that job to be the relationship manager.
Sure.
In your case in the House, and to say, why can't we all get along and why shouldn't we get along? So how do we get the effectiveness of having two opposite poles with not having the argumentative part of that? Is that ever going to happen?
Well, probably not. Obviously, and
it seems to be getting worse.
Sure. The Speaker is the traffic cop in the House and the President Pro Tem in the Senate. I think what happens is that we end up the gap between the citizens and the government in North Carolina and South Carolina has never been wider. And what I try to do is I try to knock down barriers that make that gap wider and bring people closer to their government. And the way that I do that is I only focus on 4 or 5 things a year, as you mentioned, in an effort to fix things that seem so marginal on the front end, but have such a huge impact on the back end. I have a memo in my file here from Goodyear, ironically, that says that there was a person injured after this bill became effective. And because of the legislation, instead of reserving $400,000, because they're self-insured, just like the state is, they only had to reserve $250,000. That extra money is now remaining in Fayetteville. The person got the attention they needed quicker, and it looks like that person, instead of being on a lifetime benefit, is going to be able to return back to that plant to work between 18 and 24 months from now. But the second paragraph is the one that really takes your breath. It says that Goodyear had recently decided to close its Union City, Tennessee plant, the same size as the one in Fayetteville, same footprint, and they made the same product. One of the leading factors in closing a plant in Tennessee and not in North Carolina was the workers' comp reform that went on in North Carolina. And the memo ended up by saying, it's nice to know that our 3,000 employees in Fayetteville also know that the world is not tilted against North Carolina, that we can compete globally with all the sister plants around the United States.
Andy?
You know, it's nice to keep talking about these things that have happened, but I'm a guy that looks forward and looks to the future, and what I see in North Carolina that's happened over the last legislative session is that the General Assembly cut funding for early childhood education and cut funding for the university systems. We've been doing that in South Carolina, and we're at the bottom of the list. North Carolina, I was up a few days ago in Hendersonville, and what is remarkably different about the public education system in North Carolina is that there is public support behind it. In South Carolina, in the legislature, there's sometimes, I feel, a feeling that the public education doesn't get what it wants, or what it deserves. What I am worried about is North Carolina going down the same road towards South Carolina by cutting these investments in the future. Invest is not a dirty word, meaning just spend money only. It's investing in human capital. So what can you say to people that are worried that the university system is going to get more cuts? I mean, certainly it can use perhaps some cuts, and early childhood education is going to suffer more.
I guess my response would be that the days of spraying and praying, spraying money on the problems of public education and pray that they work, I think those days are over. But this is not like a piece of country ham where you can just take a sharp knife and cut the fat around it and all of a sudden all these problems go away. The issues that he refers to that are in K-12 education and in higher education, it's marbleized meat. This fat is deep into the meat of all these different agencies. And what we have to do is we have to continue to focus not on the systems, but on the students. If we can put our emphasis on the students and not the systems, we can correct these problems. But the other issue is that the 70% of the people in Winston-Salem have no direct involvement with public schools except that they're asked to pay for them. And they want to see a better return on that investment. Our four-year high school graduation rate is horrible. Our four-year college graduation rate in North Carolina is even worse. People are tired of spraying and praying. They want things fixed. They want representatives to represent them. They want people to go down there and be a verb to fix the problems that are facing this state. And I agree with you. I agree. Any investments in public education are the result of, that's why I'm sitting here.
Yeah, Andy, I'm sorry,
well,
but we got about a minute.
I guess what I worry about is that you say it's marbleized. I say perhaps you're going to be eating your seed corn, which is not a good thing.
You know, Andy, I wish we could go down this road, but we got about a minute left, and we're going to have to wrap it up.
Sure.
But thank you. And Jonathan, I want one more question for the speaker here. In beginning of December of 2011 now, not long ago, you surprised a lot of people and said you weren't going to seek a sixth term, and that's all you said.
Right.
Fourth term.
Right.
Why not? Do you have your eye on a higher seat?
Well, the reason is that it really goes back to Matthew 14, that at some point everybody has to get out of the boat. And I've done a lot of thinking about what the opportunities are in 2012. a great opportunity for me is to go home, which I think every politician should think about, going home either to the district or the House.
You're going to buy a bigger boat?
No, I don't own a boat at all. But
we're out of time.
Okay.
Your Honor, thank you for being on the program.
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Jonathan, thank you. Andy, thanks for the stretch from Moncks Corner, but it's good to have you on the program.
Problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Nice to see y'all. Thank you.
Until next week, I'm Chris William. Good night.